What's up, everybody? We are live again, Dynasty Mirror Search for Huru, and I have a special guest on with us today. He is no stranger to Search for Huru, brother Thea West. And today's topic is: should immigrants get credit for building America? Now, before we came on, and this is somewhat off topic, brother West, we were talking about Atlanta.
Mm,
Uh, a couple things. I don't know if you know. So even though Atlanta is a majority black city, home ownership amongst blacks in Atlanta is only at 25%. Then of course, we have black leadership, but the things that are affecting just about every major city here in America, whether it be gentrification, the schools are terrible, are still the consistent issues. So it's just, but again, Atlanta is looked at as this black mecca. Um, but yeah, it's just because you have black leadership doesn't necessarily mean you have black power. And I think that's been a consistent issue when it comes to black leadership here in America. Outside of, from my understanding, when Maynard Jackson was in office here in Atlanta, and then the brother Marion Barry in D.C., from what I understand.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, and I definitely remember those two brothers. Um, yeah, you're right. Just because you are a majority black city, or if you were a black country, that does not mean that you have good black leadership. That does not mean that you actually have the amount of power that you should have being a black majority of your city or of your country. And we know that about countries because we remember, some of us remember, and those of us who don't remember or are too
Uh,
young,
Brother
you know.
West, I was going to tell you. I was going to tell you. You're kind of far. We can't really see you. We only can see like half your face on the camera.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. You got me?
Let's see here real quick. I'm looking at the. All right, let's bring it over a little bit more.
All right.
Yeah, we good now. You good now. You good now.
All right, you got me. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So what you have um, Rhodesia in Africa, formerly, Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. But it was ran by a white man, okay, controlled by a white man. Um, and you had cities, regions in Africa that were controlled by white people. And you definitely had a majority black people. All right. So in Atlanta, you have, as you said, a majority of black folk. But a lot of that control is not really in the hands of black people because uh, after whites moved out of Atlanta, what happened, and blacks started attaining political power, what happened is that a lot of that power became centered with the region, a regional area, or the state. They obtain a lots of power, uh, dissipating that power from blacks in the city of Atlanta. Now, one other point too, and I haven't looked into this in a while now, but I also heard that with Atlanta, with the airport being in
Yeah.
Atlanta,
Yeah.
it brings in a lot of money. What is the status? I had heard that a lot of that money, some of that money that was coming into the airport there, the state was trying to get a lot of that money instead of the city of Atlanta getting that money. What is the status with that?
I think it's still up for. I think they're still like debating or whatever over it. But basically, what they're saying is that there are a couple. I guess there was corruption going on at the airport between vendors in the city, and so the state was trying to leverage that in order for them to take over. But the thing is, Delta, I would say this, is definitely running a racket at the airport because number one, Tia, with a city the size of Atlanta, we should have two airports. Chicago has two airports. New York might as well have three airports. You have JFK. LaGuardia, and then you have the airport, which is only like 20 minutes away with no traffic in New Jersey, in Newark. The Bay Area, San Francisco, and Oakland, which they're pretty much next to each other. They have two airports. In LA, you have Burbank, LAX, and Anaheim. Um, Miami, you have Miami Airport and Fort Lauderdale. In Georgia, you only have one major airport. And a city like this, the size of Atlanta, Atlanta should have two airports. But what's going on? Delta is running a racket at the airports. So the tickets, like for example, international tickets coming out of Atlanta are way more expensive than New York and DC. DC has two airports as well, when in essence they should be cheaper. But again, because of the racket Delta's running, because they control the airport for the most part, them and the flunkies over at the city, they won't allow low cost international airlines to come in and set up. Like they need the Ethiopian Airlines. They need, they need to come to Atlanta because Atlanta, the Atlanta airport is the busiest airport in the world, and the reason why is because there's only one airport here in Atlanta, and it's Delta's national headquarters, or world headquarters. But yeah, so the state is trying to leverage the fact that there have been a couple scandals in regards to bribes between the city and these vendors. And so the state wants to come in and try and take over. And I'll be honest, I don't know how it will help. I guess there'll be some more oversight. I would say this: when Maynard Jackson, I guess the airport was, redone under Maynard Jackson. He ensured that, and he was unapologetic about it, that Black people get a lot of these vendor roles and concessions opportunities at these airports, at this airport, which is the case. Because I used to work at the airport through my job. But again, it's just Delta's running a racket. So I'm all for the state takeover if they could do something about Delta. But I think it's still, I'm trying to think. I think they passed the legislation, but it's so much more red tape that the state has to go through that they can't just come out and take over. I think they passed a resolution for them to take over, but it's still a lot for them to go through to I guess acquire or take over the airport. So it's not as cut and dry.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's interesting. All that I did not know. So that's good. So, but you favor actually a second airport being built.
There needs to be a second. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I wonder what the state thinks about that.
I think that actually the state before actually tried to pass a resolution to build a second airport, but I forgot what happened with it. But this was years ago. But there needs to be airports in Atlanta.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, hey, thanks for that that lesson on what's happening there with that airport.
Yeah, but it definitely needs some more oversight. But so the topic is, should immigrants get credit for building America? Now, I had sent you a message this morning, Tia, in regards to a Facebook post that my friend tagged me in. And the post said this: how did a nation of immigrants become a nation that hates immigrants? Now, Tia, like, my ancestors didn't come over here as immigrants. Your ancestors didn't come over here as immigrants. So why when you say a nation of immigrants, you're completely erasing the experience and the history of those whose ancestors came over here as African slaves. When I hear people say that immigrants built this country, and it's like, no, and not to, I guess, reduce or minimize the contribution that immigrants have made, but at the end of the day, the foundation of this country has been built. No matter how you feel about ADOS, no matter how you feel about them, I mean, the truth is the foundation of this country was built on the backs of this African slaves. So when people say immigrants built this country, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on it would be definitely similar to yours in that, yes, our ancestors did come over here on slave ships. They came over here and were brought here not because they were looking for a better life, not because they wanted to come over here, not because they were running away from as refugees or looking for asylum, uh, not because they were looking for an H-1B visa program, not for that, not for economic reasons. That is not why our ancestors came here. They were brought here. They were forced here under force. Men, women, children, all brought here, forced here, stolen, sold, all of that. So now, being brought here by force, our people were forced to do the labor. Long before a white female came to these shores of North America, and even more specifically outside of what is now the United States, the shores of South America, Central America, Mexico, and the islands, Cuba, and many of the other islands, Jamaica, Barbados, we're talking about Martinique, French island, all these islands. We were brought, and our ancestors were brought here to build the great wealth of European states. That was the sole purpose of our people being brought here. Now, why did they bring so many of us? Now, some people will say, well, yes, but in what is now the United States, comparatively, only a small number of Africans were brought here, comparative to Brazil and some of the other what are now Hispanic countries. A small number, and that is true comparatively. But we were brought to all of those lands for the same reasons. When the Spanish sailed into, after Queen Isabella funded the trip from Europe across the Atlantic to Christopher Columbus and Cortez and others, when they came here, what they did, they were looking for gold, they were looking for riches, they were looking for that. What they did was they found people already here. They were already here. They were here in the tens of thousands. And what happened to so many of those people, and in some regions and areas, in a majority, those people were wiped out. I mean, we're talking about, in the true sense of the word, genocide. They were wiped out in some of these areas, especially the males, the men, and the women who remained. The Spanish, the Portuguese, they would have children by those women. And then that's where we get the term mestizos, the mixed people. But mixed, if you're talking about in the United States, the Creoles, the mixed people. So they wiped out huge populations, just as they wiped out here in North America the millions of bison, the buffalo. They wiped them out. The millions and millions of a type of pigeon. They wiped them out. Okay, these are the Europeans. This was their nature. You know, similar to the nature of even many of them today, where their nature hasn't changed. Where even in the Trump administration now, they are removing certain ordinances, certain laws to allow these millions of acres of land, public land, to be available for these same ancestors of killers, thuggers, muggers, and conquerors to hunt on more federal land. Now, hunt, kill, that's what they did. not only with the animals, but they did it with the people. Now, some of the people remained here. Some of them survived, but in many cases, these were the women, because the men who would not work and do the labor, the slave labor that the Europeans wanted, those men, the Europeans wanted to get rid of. They would kill them. So because the Europeans had a shortage of male labor here in the United States and in some other areas of Mexico, South America, Central America, what they did is they started bringing over Africans to do the work, African men, and then African women, and then African children. They started bringing them over in the millions to do the work of the men, to replace the men that they had killed here in the United States, in other areas outside of what is the United States, here in the Western Hemisphere, to replace them. They started bringing them over. Now, again, they were not coming. These Africans were not coming as immigrants. As I said earlier, they were not coming for good jobs, for high wages. They weren't coming looking for that. They were forced here. They were brought here in many, many thousands of trips by ships across the Atlantic in what was known as a transatlantic slave trade, in what we call the Great Maafa, okay? Where even you had hundreds of thousands of Africans who were upon the ships. Some of them, rather than go into slavery, the opportunity when it presented itself, they would cast their bodies, they would jump overboard and would rather be eaten by the sharks that were following some of the ships, as some of the ships would cross certain sectors across the Atlantic Ocean. So they would rather be killed, they would rather die than to face the fate that awaited them once they got to the shores, the docks, where they would disembark from those ships, whether it was in Cuba, whether it was in Jamaica, wherever it was, Martinique, all those islands, or in Mexico, in Central American countries, down in Brazil, Peru, many, many countries in South America. But that is how most of the overwhelming majority of Black people got here into this hemisphere. Now, notice I said the overall majority. I did not say all, because just as you had various shades of people and skin color in various areas of the world, you also had various shades of people who were existing right here in North and South and Central America when the first Europeans arrived here on their ships. But they were not a majority of the people who were already here. Now, there are some among us who are they're peddling the lie that all of us Black folk were already here. And I have said before.
Oh yeah, I want you to really go in on that. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I've said before that if in fact your ancestors were already here, then you deserve to be enslaved if they kicked your asses like they did, came in here, took your land, enslaved your men, your women, your children, and did it for centuries and centuries, then you deserve to be enslaved if you're that damn weak. Okay? Now, and what I'm saying is that did not happen. Even in Africa, where you had enslavement in certain areas of Africa where Europeans came in and enslaved people. And before the Europeans, you had Arab groups who came in and enslaved Black people. Even there, Africans removed the shackles of slavery long before African Americans removed the shackles of slavery here in the United States. Okay, now you have colonialism in Africa also, and colonialism existed for as long, and in some cases longer, than chattel slavery existed right here in the United States, in countries or in areas of Africa, but not slavery. Not slavery as a whole, it did not exist as long in Africa. Now, so when we talk about immigrants, no, we are not immigrants. We are not immigrants. What are we? We are a people who were taken stolen by under various means, sometimes by certain groups of Africans, sold, willingly sold, and other times by Africans under duress, taken. Now, what do I mean by duress? Duress means that the pale-skinned man would come in, would take the wife of the African chief, would take the children of the African chief, and would use the wife and or the children as bargaining tools for that chief to gather together to capture other blacks in Africa and bring them to the ports for carrying away and off into enslavement. In other words, they were kidnapping certain African leaders or their children or family members or friends and using them as a means of leverage for them to go out and capture other Africans of other tribes generally, for them to be taken into enslavement. So you had corruption there, but you also had that situation that I just described where the pale-skinned men were doing what they even do today. They still do that today. That is how they do it. They'll take your stuff. And then if you want your stuff back, then you have to abide by whatever rules and regulations that they want to impose upon you. They do it with sanctions today. What did the British do with the Iranian oil tanker ship? They took Iran's oil tanker, trying to use that as leverage to get Iran to do what the Anglos, that is the British and the Americans, wanted them to do. But what did Iran do? Iran retaliated and says, okay, we're going to take 2 of your ships. That's right. We're going to take 2 of your ships. So they have and use the same tactics today that they used during the era of slavery. So once again, back to the question of your topic, were we immigrants? No, hell no, we were not immigrants. We were an enslaved people. We were a part, some would say, prisoners of war. And that has never, ever been resolved those hundreds of years in the United States of America, where Black folk were either enslaved or you were going through Jim Crow after Reconstruction, and then all of the post-slavery, post-Jim Crow discrimination, all of the lynchings, all of the burning out of Black businesses, all of the removal after Reconstruction of Black politicians from Congress, terrorizing them, terrorizing their family, burning their property up, and then saying eventually, you're free, but we don't owe you a damn thing, but you're going to, as pale-skinned Americans, as the U.S. government, as American enterprise, you're going to pay the slave owners money for what they lost. You're going to compensate them for what they lost. You're going to compensate them by awarding them even more land. You're going to give them even multiple, what was called later, land grant acts, where Black folk who built, labored under hard taskmasters, labored to build this country. As I said, even before the white female arrived here, it was the Black men, women, and children who broke the rock, who built the roads. In other words, built the infrastructure, built the buildings, built all of it, making the path smooth so that the other Europeans, the white females, so that the Italians, so that other Europeans, no matter where they were coming from Europe, so that even now today, the interlopers, the illegal aliens who come across the American border, so that they may have a good life, so that they, in other words, may eat your cake, may eat what you built, what you structured, the foundation of America, the wealth of America. The foundational wealth was in agriculture. From the agricultural revolution, where huge amounts of wealth was earned, where America economically, as far as the amount of wealth was great, was at its greatest. during the agricultural revolution. Then from the agricultural revolution, that wealth was then inherited or leveraged into the industrial revolution. That wealth that was then inherited and leveraged into the technological revolution. It was then leveraged into what is now known as the nanotechnology revolution, and then being leveraged into globalism, where you have Branson and others, where they're coming in and they're pushing other people, promoting other people, other immigrants, illegal or legal, to come in and eat your cake, to take what you, African Americans, what you built in America. Now, there are some people who go under the name ADOS, which is American Descendants of Slavery. They don't like the term African. Therefore, they say American. Okay? Now, those are people who are like that. Those are a confused people. It's right for them to want reparations, but they're confused. But go ahead, my brother.
Tia, I was going to say, break down how they're confused. Let's get into that. Them omitting the African in them.
Say it again.
I was going to say, if you could unpackage what makes them confused in regards to why they're omitting their connection from Africa or to Africa.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, it's all in the name. Okay. It's all in the name. Now, for a very, very long time, African Americans were referred to as terms such as niggers, such as negro, which means black in Spanish and all. Negrito, if you're talking in Spanish, negative way, and also referred to as just plain black. Okay? And black doesn't define anything except a color. That's it. Doesn't define anything. And now you have those who are now saying, since we want to distinguish ourselves from other black people who may not have been born in the United States or whose children may not have been born here. In other words, they immigrated here after chattel slavery. Then we want to be called Americans. Okay? And then to further distinguish that, we're already Americans anyway. If you were born here, you're American. Okay? Period. If you were born here and your parents were legal when you were born here. Notice I said legal. Okay? Right. 14th Amendment did not apply to other people, to immigrants who were children who were born here. It did not apply to that. It wasn't talking about immigrants. So, but when we talk about black folk being American descendants of slavery, yes, you are. But you could have had AADOS, African American descendants of slavery, but no, someone said, no. We don't want to be identified with Africans. We don't want to be identified with Africans. And then they drilled down a little further when the movie Black Panther came out. And you heard some of these same people saying, Killmonger in this fictitious movie, Killmonger is our hero. He's our hero. But that fictitious Killmonger was a thug. He was a thug. He was not much different than the thug who is terrorizing some of the black neighborhoods in this country, who's selling the drugs on the street that's getting your children hooked on those drugs in the streets. But that was some of these people who says, I don't want to identify with African. Therefore, I don't want African in the name, anywhere in the name. Therefore, I want to solicit, I want to campaign for, let's remove the term African Americans. Let's get rid of that. You have a census that's coming out next year. Right. And you have some of those people who are of that mindset who are pushing for, let's remove African Americans. Well,
and replace it with what?
That's right. Replace it with what? Well, some of them, as I said, some of them will want to replace it with ADOS. Okay? Okay. With ADOS. I am not a proponent of that. I am not a subscriber to that type of mentality. I am not. I mean, sometimes black folks can fight over some of the most trivial things. Okay? All right. Now, African Americans, it defines where most of you came from, and it defines who you are nationally. Nationally meaning American. You're an American citizen. And then there are some of those, especially some of those in the more science, we're not citizens. We're not citizens. Okay? You know, trivial things. Then I asked them, my brother, my sister, my Moorish brother, my Moorish sister, when you went down to get your driver's license, and there was a check mark box right there that says U.S. citizen, yes or no, did you not check that box that said U.S. citizen? And
Oh,
if you have a passport,
I was gonna say they have like the Moorish so-called driver's license now. Have you seen
but
one?
no, I haven't seen one. But the question is, does the police recognize that driver's license?
No, they don't. They don't recognize it in the court either.
Okay, they don't recognize it. Now, if they said, if some of my Moorish brothers and sisters said, well, we don't have to pay taxes. Now, if they don't pay their taxes, where will the IRS send them? To jail, to prison.
Whoa. Hold on, Thea. Hold on. Time out. I am a Hennessy colored, copper colored, Chickasaw, Choctaw Moor from Turtle Island. That's what I am. A Hennessy colored, copper colored, Chickasaw, Choctaw Moor from Turtle Island.
Well, let's not go all the way back to Turtle Island. First, prove that you're Chickasaw. Prove that you're Choctaw, which are Native American tribes.
I have proof. My grandma.
And that's good.
My grandma had good hair, so we thought that we had Native American in our family because my grandma had good hair. That's the
good hair.
That's proof.
Well, okay, all right. Let's deal with mentality. What's good hair?
Her hair, like you know, she could comb straight through it. You know what I mean? She could comb straight through it, and it was curly. It was kind of curly, like the bangs would be curly, and she could comb straight through it.
She can comb straight through it. That's good hair.
So that's proof that we had Indian in our family.
Okay, then what's the opposite of good hair?
Hair like this. But see, I'm still indigenous to this country because, you know, over time, my hair curled up because of the 9 ether from the sun came directly to my crown, and now it curled up.
The sun did it, huh? Blaming it on the sun.
Yeah.
Well, we know that the original human beings were born with that hair that so many are calling not good hair, bad hair, that hair that the comb won't just straight go through. Okay? I mean, these words are powerful, but you have to understand the origins of this self-hate. Okay, good hair. He's got good hair. She's got good hair. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Her hair is fine. Oh, wow. Wow. Fair skin. All these words, fair skin. Notice I don't say fair skin. I'll say pale skin. I call it what it is. Pale skin. Some people have wondered and asked me, T. West, why do you say with white people, why do you say that they have pale skin? I said, because they're not white. Grab a white piece of paper, put it up next to Donald Trump. Well, somebody said, well, he's orange, T. West. He's orange. Okay, but not white. Pale skin. That's what they are. They're pale skin. They're just like many black children look like when they're first born. The skin is pale, but as the days move along, you will see that skin begin to darken. Okay, so that's maturity. That's maturity, and the sun has nothing to do with that. You get out there in the sun, you can get a tan, but you leave that sun, that tan's gonna go away. Okay, whether you black, whether you white. The sun has nothing to do with the texture of your doggone hair. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So now, so when we talk about I'm this Native American tribe, I'm that Native American tribe. Yes, some of you are, but the majority of you are not. Okay, and never will be. Okay, and some of your ancestors mixed with in the South, mixed with the tribes in the South before you had the Trail of Tears, where they marched off thousands and thousands of Native Americans, and along with them, some of their children who were, some of them were black, some of them were mixed. They marched them off out of the southern states, off to the reservations, the Trail of Tears. So, but on your topic, my brother Dinas,
Yes, sir.
are we immigrants?
Absolutely not.
Well, profoundly, yes. Definitely not. We are not immigrants. How do we distinguish ourselves? Well, there's a history. There's a record. Records were kept by slave owners. Records were kept by the U.S. government. And many of those records are now in the hands of the Mormon church. You have that. You have ancestry.com out there that will tell you a big part of your history here in the United States of America. Government, they kept records for tax purposes. The records are there, at least most of it, not all of it for our ancestors, but a large part of the records are there. We know who we are, at least we should know who we are.
Guys, let's get these likes up. We have 219 people watching, only 75 likes. Please hit that like button. Shout out to Chima Madu for the super chat. And shout out to After the Flood for the super chat. Peace to those who understand the ADOS movement. That was his comment. Let me ask you this, Tia West, Brother West. Now, you hear us Black Americans, African Americans, leveraging the fact that we built the foundation of this country. But I don't see us leveraging that to gain power. I see a lot of people leveraging that just to be, I guess, more comfortable under this system of white supremacy. Are African Americans scared of sovereignty, having their own sovereign nation?
Well, before you can talk about or have a sovereign nation, you have to first carry out some preliminary steps.
Right.
You can't just have a sovereign nation. Now, you know, people talk about white nationalism, and some of that exists. And there's also black nationalism. Okay, there's that. But before you can have that, there are some preliminary steps. You have to have numbers. And we've talked about this in the past, Brother Dinas. You have to have numbers, and you have to have a geographical area. By numbers, I mean you have to have a considerable majority of people, of your people, who are a majority in that area. And just like in sanctuary cities where Hispanics get a majority, they start changing laws and ordinances. They start changing them. I mean, now today, like 50 years ago, you would have never dreamed of sanctuary cities and what sanctuary cities attempt to do to subvert federal laws.
Right.
You know, Section 8, subsection 1325 on illegal aliens. You would never have dreamed of anything like that. But that's what they're doing now. They're trying to make it illegal for the federal government to hold illegal aliens attempting to enter the United States in detention or to deport them back to their home countries. Okay? So when you start talking about a nation state, you have to first talk about you as a people migrating to an area so that you can really truthfully have the numbers in the majority under law vote for how you want your city, your region, your county, your state governed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That is what you have to do first. So you've heard for a long time, for the last two generations, two and a half generations. You heard Elijah Muhammad in the Nation of Islam talk
Right.
about a nation state. You heard
Right.
Minister Louis Farrakhan, a nation state. But that would entail those blacks in Chicago leaving Chicago.
Well, Tia, let me, if I can interject. I mean, black people are migrating as we speak anyway, especially black Americans here in America. I mean, there's a mass migration coming from, LA, now going to Vegas, to Arizona, coming back to the South, going to Texas. You have people from the North coming to Atlanta. So, I mean, we've been migrating back and forth now since we were freed.
Yeah, yeah, you've been migrating. However, there has not been a great yet, not yet, a great migration as there was in the 1940s and 50s,
Mm-hmm.
a great migration back to the southeastern region of the United States. Now, the southeastern region still has, by far, the majority of African Americans.
True.
By far. I mean, we're talking about 39% of blacks live in the southeastern region. You and I, we reside in the southeastern region.
Right.
Okay? Now, but unlike the 1950s, where you had a great migration of blacks leaving the southeastern region, going to Chicago, to Detroit, to New York, to Arizona, to California, migrating to those areas, we have not yet seen a great migration back. And it's needed because what you have happening in the South now, you have a huge influx into the South of Hispanics.
True.
And a lot of them are illegal aliens. They're coming in very, very big numbers. And when they get the numbers, they will do the same thing that they've done in large parts of California. That is what will happen in the South.
Guys, let's get these likes up. We have 226 people watching, 105 likes. What I'll do, I'll go ahead and I guess open the lines up. If you want to hop on, please send me an email, and you are more than welcome to hop on. So, Tia, why not demand power? Why not demand to control our own destiny versus, I guess what we're seeing now, where we're gonna, I guess, coerce power through people who have historically never served our best interests?
Well, some of us are demanding certain things. Some of us are demanding reparations. But also, along with that demand, you have to have a strategy. There must be a strategy. There must be a strategy outside of government, first of all, and there must be a strategy within government. That means that those of us who are outside of government, that we must exercise the power over the elected officials that we put into political office. We must exercise our power in our interests through those individuals. And for example, many of your viewers, they've heard me talk about this quite often, about illegal aliens and all. That is not in our interests. And we cannot have Karen Bass, who is the president over the Congressional Black Caucus, and other members of the Congressional Black Caucus. We cannot have them caping for supporting bad behavior, lawbreakers, interlopers, illegal aliens. We cannot have that. And the reason why we cannot have that, and the reason why we do not support that, is because that strikes at the very heart of what our best interests are all about. That's why we cannot have that. We're not racist. We have supported those people for 2 generations. And those people, and I'm talking about illegal aliens. We've supported them. We've had these so-called black-brown coalitions, and it has not overall advanced African Americans, but it has advanced illegal immigrants. Just a few days ago, Wall Street Journal came out with African Americans have lost ground in home ownership. You started your program, Dinus, with home ownership being very low, 25, 24% in Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. You started it out with that. So Wall Street Journal says African Americans are now at an all-time low in home ownership, while Hispanics, that would include these huge number of millions of illegal immigrants, their home ownership is up. Now, some of that is the fault of African Americans. It is. Okay? While you're out there caping for others, they're eating your cake. And some of it, some African Americans, you're not doing what you need to do. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. Okay? You're trying to party on some of you. You're trying to party on some of the money that you should be putting into your children, that you should be using to make sure that your children become the best that they can be, so that you will have a better generation. Generations after you would become better. So some of you are doing that. And there are a lot of you, you're doing much of the right thing. You're investing not only into yourself, but you're investing into your children. And that's good. That's good. And for the children, you have a responsibility also. Once your parents invest into you and your parents age, they become older and they become old, you're not supposed to sell the jewels and those things that your parents labored so hard to get. The land, sell the land. Too lazy to get off your ass to pay the taxes. You lose the land. You have to come out of all of that stupidity. You have to lose that post-traumatic slave syndrome. You have to throw away all of the excuses. You have to exercise self-responsibility. And as a whole, exercise collective responsibility. You have to do those things. Now, on Afro Synergy News, I tell it just like it is. Now, some people may not like it because I push self-responsibility. If you're doing bad mainly because you are not doing what you need to do, not because of what your parents did, not because of what the generation before you did. Do away with excuses. Get up and do for self. Get up and work with those African Americans who think like you, and you all can work together and build. Start first with members of your family, members of your tribe. That's how all tribes began, is through family.
Real quick, somebody in the chat room said the issue isn't, here we go. The issue isn't immigration or illegal immigration. The issue is, here we go, Jesus, the immigrants are not our problem. Jobs and wages are, because we are tied at the hip to unskilled labor. What are your thoughts on that statement?
Well, there were two, right? One was that the issue is not all those things, but the issue is Jesus.
No. The issue is jobs and wages, because we are tied to at the hip to unskilled labor. So it's not the immigrants aren't our problem. The jobs and wages are, because we are tied at the hip to unskilled labor.
Well, it's not a one-sum thing. Okay, the issue is by far no longer unskilled labor. That's not the main issue anymore, because never before in history have we had so many automated ways of doing things. I mean, automated ways. Even in the high tech area. I mean, now the system programming has become so sophisticated that even now I made my living a large part of my life programming.
Right.
Even in that area, now you've got code that is so intelligent and so smart that it'll write most of the code for you. And then the programmer will then compile all of that code together and all. Okay, so, but I gave that example just to point out, even in the high tech area. Now, in the low skilled area, many of those areas are now being automated, being done by robotics
Right.
in so many of those areas.
I told people
So,
about. I was in a distribution center back when I was working for my old company, and they had automated forklifts.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You have robotics where in a warehouse, you have robotics that are on conveyor like belt. You got conveyor belts and everything running through the warehouse. And if it needs to go out there and pick up a certain part with all the barcodes and all, it just goes up and down through that warehouse and it scans and says, "Oh, there's the part right there. It's on aisle number this, shelf number this. The level of the shelf is this," and then it picks up that part. It puts it on the automated dolly or automated forklift, and it takes it on back up to the shipping dock. Okay, you have that's happening even at airports, the city of Atlanta.
Uh-huh.
You have automation within the conveyor belts that automatically automates that luggage to where it needs to go in the terminals.
True.
It's all automated. So this talk about unskilled labor, no, most of these people are not coming into the United States to work as unskilled laborers. Some of them may do that for a few days, a few weeks, a few months, but then they're looking for city jobs, jobs with the city, hauling the garbage, working as janitor, working
Right.
in the hotels. Okay, they're looking for that work. And that's work that your parents, many of your parents once did. They did that work. So they're coming to eat your cake. And then you have others, they're not coming here even for work. They're coming here to get on welfare. They're coming here to live in government housing, HUD housing, even though that's illegal, like Ben Carson said. But you have Julian Castro,
Right.
who, when he was HUD director, he allowed his people, the Castros, the Ramiros, the Alvarezes, and all, he allowed them to live in HUD housing. So it's not a surprise that he has called for his Democratic opponents, all of them, to support him in getting rid of subsection 1325 of the illegal alien laws, to get rid of it. And then you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and
Oh
others,
God. Her. Oh God.
Cory Booker, running up to the border, lying. Alexandria, she's talking about, well, they are forcing the children, the people on the border to drink water out of the toilets. Well, not true. Not true. Many of these people who are coming up to the border, when they see a toilet that is integrated in, that's a hybrid between a drinking fountain and a toilet in the detention centers,
Right.
they say, we're drinking water out of the toilet. Well, they're not drinking water out of the toilets. It's just like in many jails and prisons, you have an integrated toilet along with a face bowl, along with a water drinking fountain. It's
Well,
all integrated in together.
in my previous sales job, there's a company called Toto USA who actually makes the integrated toilets and sinks and water faucets.
Yes, yes. I mean, this is propaganda. This is propaganda. And when it's put out there, the majority of people believe that garbage. They believe it. And they take it and they run with it. They shouted out to the world, look at what our government is doing to these people. This is wrong. These people are in concentration camps. This is wrong. And then some of them, they'll put up a picture of illegal immigrants behind a chain link fence, along with a picture of Africans in a packed ship.
Yeah, which
being
is
over here into slavery, and try to make a comparison between the two. What'd you say?
And it really pisses me off when they do that.
Yeah,
because as you said, we weren't voluntary immigrants. We
that's
didn't
right.
Voluntarily, they did.
That's right. That's right. We were not immigrants. We were not immigrants. We did not immigrate here. All the other groups of people come here unless they're being trafficked, okay? They come here willingly. They came here willingly. And then you have those, of course, who say, well, all of these pale-skinned Americans, these white Americans, all of them are immigrants. All of them are here illegally. Go home. Okay? Well, hey, look. If you have the power, if you have the military might to force them to go home, then your words have relevancy.
Right.
Repeat
that again. Repeat that again.
If you have the power, the military might to force them to go back to Europe, then your words have relevancy. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of empty rhetoric. What Europeans did, they savagely conquered. They took what they wanted. After they took what they wanted, they created their laws. They created their constitution. Okay? And we know that the Constitution of the United States originally, which was actually borrowed from the Iroquois, by the way, that their Constitution did not apply to black men and women. We knew that. When we know that, it did not originally apply to us. Okay? But that was not a surprise when they said that all men are created equal. Well, that was written originally by somebody else, the Iroquois. It was not written by the Europeans. So, and you saw the reality of that, the fallacy in that, because they says, oh, what about the black man? Oh, okay. He's not fully a man. He's not human. He's a beast. And we'll count him among the beasts. When we count our cattle, when we send in our taxpayers to the U.S. government and about our assets, we will count him as a part of our assets, the number of head of cattle that we have. But not only will we count them as cattle, sheep, horses, mules, donkeys, etc., but we will also breed them, especially after the British on the high seas started stopping the slave trade on the high seas. The Americans started breeding farms in Virginia and in other areas, breeding farms to breed blacks, to increase their numbers. The more slaves you had, the more assets you had. The more assets you had, the more wealth you had. Yes, to Mitch McConnell, head of the Senate, Republican side, slave-owning family. Yes, to Barack Obama, descendant of a slave-owning family. And also Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer just came out and he said that, hey, now, I as a Democrat, on the Democrat side, head of the Democrats in the Senate, I support reparations. And that's good, Chuck. That's good, because we're going to use it. Just as we're going to use the words of Mitch McConnell and the fact that he is a descendant of slaves, families, owners of slaves. We're going to use that in our favor, in our advantage, to eventually get the reparations that African Americans, those who descended from slavery deserve. They deserve that. The promise of the 40 acres and the mule. But the 40 acres and the mule never came. Never ever came. All of that. We're going after all of that. And to white Americans, those of you who say, but yeah, but T. West, I like most of what you're saying, but I didn't own any slaves, T. West. And T. West, slavery was a long time ago, T. West. But it's a debt unpaid, my white brother, my white sister. It's a debt unpaid. It's a promise that was never fulfilled. The Freedmen's Bank, money that was put in there by black soldiers, but that bank went under. It went defunct. And the Republicans did not stand in support of what the Dixie Democrats were doing. In fact, some of the Republicans, they turned coats. They changed coats. They changed sides. They flipped sides. And they started supporting the Dixie Democrats. They started supporting what was being done to African Americans, the burnout, the lynchings. You started supporting that. So it is no surprise today that Mitch McConnell, a Republican, not like the Republican of the era of Abraham Lincoln, but more like Andrew Johnson, the Democrat who replaced Abraham Lincoln when the agents of the Roman Church, the Jesuits, John Booth and others assassinated Abraham Lincoln. So it is very, very important for white Americans to realize that you are the beneficiaries of slavery. You have white privilege. People don't call the cops today on you because you as a white realtor is over there showing a house in a certain neighborhood, in a white neighborhood, to a black person. They don't call the cops on you. They call the cops on black realtors who are showing a house to another black person, or could be showing it to a white person in a predominantly white upscale neighborhood. That's today in the 21st century. This is what's happening. This is the form of Jim Crow that's being extended into the 21st century. This is redlining being extended and discrimination being extended into the 21st century. It never ended. It just changed its forms. But it's still the same devil. It's still the same savagery that's perpetrated against African Americans because of who you are and the color of your skin. Now, I heard some of the Hebrew brothers and sisters, when I said who you are, I heard some of you said amen, brother, of who you are. But anyway, go ahead, Brother Dynas.
All right, let's see here. Let me read some of these super chats. And we also have Renetta Jones, Miss Renetta Jones in the chat room. Let me, in the chat, let me, I don't know, where am I? Here we go. Let me read some of these super chats. Thank you, Fafu Fumala, for the super chat. Eshe, thank you. And then shout out to Ya'ank Ra'ak. I see some cognitive dissonance in the chat, but I don't give energy to talking heads. Thea West knows of which he speaks. Absolutely. Renetta, is there anything you want to add to this?
Yep, sure. I'll be quick. Guys, thank you for having me on. I'll be quick. In order to understand the Hispanic white supremacy construct, okay, this is where you get Hispanic who lean towards being white as their top priority. You have to understand INRI, okay? INRI in Latin is in his name conquer, which came out of the Catholic Church. And if you do any research, you will understand that Catholicism runs Latin America.
True.
You also have to understand patria mia, okay, or my fatherland, or patria mia, okay? My fatherland. And the fatherland in the Americas for Latin Americans is Europe, okay? Do you get where I'm going with this? Let me explain it further. If many wars in Latin America, like what is happening to Venezuela and what is happening in Central America, it's whenever they have mestizo leaders or mestizo rulers like your Chavez, okay, in your Cuba, in your Venezuela, in Central America. Certain countries in the West and many of the Latin American leaders have spoken out about this, and they have said, because of the curl in my hair and because my patria mia is not Europe, they are trying to remove me from office. Okay? And this goes back to who is the strong arm that governs Latin American countries. It is the Catholic Church. Now, when we break down INRI, which is in his name, conquer, okay, this is where you get the seizing and paper genocide, which originated out of the Catholic Church. Most of, and I'm not saying do it, what I am saying is this: your reparations is supposed to come from the Catholic Church first.
Mm.
I'm going to lose a whole bunch of people on this. But if you're willing to do your history, you're going to understand what was at the helm in Europe that had Europeans under white slavery in Europe, okay, with your prima noctus and your, oh God, I forgot what it's called, was at the behest of the Catholic Church. Now, when the white Europeans, you have this, it was called serfdom. That's what it was called in Europe, when Europe was originally, your regular citizens in Europe was originally slaves. Okay? Go do your homework. When the peasant class rose up against the ruling class, of which the church instituted this using your Bible, okay? And they got rid of serfdom to give the regular white people access to land and their own independence. It was at the behest of that same church that they had to go out into the four corners of the planet to find what you call new territory. There would not have been an Isabella in Spain without the Catholic Church blessing it. There would not have been a, what you call when you convert, the conversion of the Muranos without the behest of the Catholic Church. So the base of your reparations start from religion first, because that's who originated it in Europe. When it fell in Europe, they came after Africa and they came after the Americas. And it is at the behest of the church that gave you the government that backed slavery, that gave you the shipping route, because we have to remember Columbus, it was a trade war that was going on, okay, conquering the high seas and bringing the seas and bringing the new land under INRI, in his name, conquer. I'm going to lose a lot of people on this, okay? The last and final thing I wanted to talk about was the redlining is not limited to Black America. I was so shocked when I went to Trinidad and they started talking about this thing called zoning through education. And I said, wait, where did I hear this before? Luckily for me, I like to study Black American experience. I said, this is redlining. Then I started listening to people in Guyana. They're redlining Guyana. Then I started listening to Jamaicans, people from the Bahamas, St. Vincent. They are redlining all of the Americas and acquiring all that land under a white minority. Black Americans, I need you to understand something very important. And I said this to Ados, but Ados is a little bit too emotional and not logical. If you are going for reparations, you cannot go for reparations and use the term slave. Why? Legal definition of slavery in relationship to being paid for your labor, it says legally a slave cannot be compensated for work. So if you're going to bring reparations, you cannot legally call your ancestors slaves. And last and finally, Black Americans, you have to remove from the Constitution 3/5 of a person.
Is it still there? Does it still say that?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Okay.
Whether they enforce it secretly, this is why you're getting shot, people getting killed, and no one's going to prison because you're still not considered a complete human.
Right.
This goes back to eugenics, okay? When you study eugenics, when the world fell, because at one point in time, long story, blacks was the standard of beauty. When that fell, the standard of humanity shifted from that which was black to that which was white. And then it gave birth to what we have known today as eugenics. Under eugenics, a person who has, this is your race code now, and I'm going to go into your race code, and I'll get off. This is where you get Black people not being 100% human. When you study eugenics, they said based upon craniology, the size of the head, Black people's heads are whatever. This is all pseudoscience, but they uphold it. It's smaller, therefore they cannot be as intelligent as a white person, therefore they cannot be constituted as a full human. That is where they associate Black people with what? Primates. Okay, I'm showing you the depth of what they believe. Okay, last and finally in your race codes. Okay, now what they did was they abolished slavery, the physical act of slavery. Okay, unless you're in prison. But what you Black Americans missed, and I suggest that you go back and read the slave code. Right before they abolished slavery, they shifted the meaning of slavery from an act to a skin color. What does that mean? It means they knew they were going to abolish the act of slavery and making it illegal. And they shifted slavery, North Carolina race codes, you can go look it up. They shifted the meaning of a slave to someone who has what they call dark skin or melanin. This is how complex this system was set up. And reparations is only surface level compensation. You have to get to the root of this ideology that makes a group of people believe that they are the true humans and have the divine destiny. I'm telling you what's at the helm of this. They believe divine destiny to rule, and the root of it stems out of your religion. That's all I have to say. Thank you for the conversation.
No problem, Renetta. Anytime. Brother T West, you want to add anything to that?
Okay, to my dear sister, yes, redlining and gentrification. Let me tell you about the Europeans. This is what they do. When they find something and discover something that works, they repeat it. They tell their friends in London. There's gentrification that's been occurring in London. Okay, it starts here in the United States. They repeat it in areas across London. So that applies to gentrification. It applies to redlining, and they'll repeat it in Jamaica and in other islands in the Caribbean and elsewhere. They repeat things that they have success at. Also, now correction here now about the 3/5 humans. no longer about it being in the U.S. Constitution. No, it is no longer in the U.S. Constitution. It's not there. Okay, and also, and I've heard people say that it's still under 3/5, that we're still 3/5 human. No, 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 not true. It's not in the Constitution. Also, slavery under skin color, the origins. We have to understand who originated this skin color thing. And that dates back to Europe. That dates back to a very, very revered man in among the Ashkenazim. And some of you who haven't been following Afrosynergy for a while, you don't know that Ashkenazim is the true ethnic identity of those who call themselves Jews. Benjamin Netanyahu's people, they're Ashkenazim. They're proselyte Jews. They were not Jews. They never descended from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, none of that. They didn't descend from them. But that group of people, there was a man by the name of Solomon ben Isaac in the early 1600s in Belgium and Austria area of Europe. And he was known as Rabbi Rashi. Rabbi Rashi, he was the one who coined the term and the aspect of enslaving black people based upon skin color. He was the one who codified all of that. He was the one who stated that they shall be born ugly and black, and that they shall be slaves unto our people, perpetually slaves, and talked about that their hair shall be kinky, their nose shall be wide, and their eyes shall be red and ugly. These shall be ugly people, and they shall be as slaves. And as I said, the skin will be black. So those aspects, as far as the origins of slavery being applied and equated with one's skin color, that is the origin of that. And you've always had within the Roman Church, not always, but for a very, very long time, for centuries, you've had two. You've had the rabbinic and you've had the priesthood within the Roman Catholic Church who have worked together, even under the fatherland. My sister mentioned the fatherland. Okay, we're talking about Nazism. We're talking about Hispanic countries, these Latin countries, historically being aligned with Nazi Germany. That's what we're talking about. And we're talking also about how the Roman Church was also aligned in there with Nazi Germany, very closely aligned with it. So, and I'll also say in response to what my dear sister presented, that the words of President Abraham Lincoln before he was assassinated, he spoke about the negative influence of the Roman Church. And also, we here in America, here in the United States of America, we're not going after the Roman Church for reparations. That's not the first step. No. That's putting the cart before the horse. We go after the nation in which we are citizens for reparations. That's who we go after. It's almost impossible to even go after Roman Catholic bishops and priests who are known, been captured, seen sexually molesting boys. Most of them get away with it. So no. We're not going there first. We don't want to be distracted towards that. We are focusing here in the United States of America. Our focus is on the U.S. government with regards to what it did and how it was responsible and how it profited from the slavery work and all of our ancestors. Now, President Abraham Lincoln, what did he have to say before he was assassinated by the agents of the Roman Church? He said, to undermine our institutions, to alienate the hearts of our people from our Constitution, and to alienate them from our laws. That's what you see being promoted by the likes of Julian Castro, who says, we don't want to obey Section 1325 of the federal laws relative to illegal aliens. That's exactly what the Roman church want him to do. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, that group of people, they are pushing and promoting what the Roman church wants here in America. And Lincoln said, and to destroy our schools. And you saw, it's not a Democrat Republican thing with this. You saw what Obama did when he was president with his executive order that said that children, you know, in the elementary schools, children should decide at school which bathroom they want to use. The boy can decide to use the girl's bathroom. The girl can decide to use the boy's bathroom. So Lincoln said to destroy our schools and to prepare a reign of anarchy. What do we see in Antifa? What do we see in even some of the extreme right-wing groups? We see anarchy. That's what we see. So to prepare a reign of anarchy here, as they have done. Now listen up, as they have done. Now we're talking about history. We're talking about something that we can look back at and ask the question, did that actually happen? Lincoln said, as they have done in the country of Ireland, as they have done in the country of Mexico, as they have done in the country of Spain. Now that talks and speaks directly to what my dear sister was talking about, because the Roman church had huge influence in those countries. The only country that where that Lincoln did not mention where the Roman church had immense influence was France. Okay, and that was and he said, and in Spain, and wherever there are any people who want to be free. Now, those are, once again, those are the words of former President Abraham Lincoln before he was assassinated by the agents of the Roman church, the Jesuit agents, before his assassination. So when we talk about slavery, yes, that's a big part of the Roman church. When Queen Isabella funded the trip over to what they call the New World, the Western Hemisphere, the Roman church was there. The priests were there. As the conquistadors slaughtered men, women, and children down in Mexico, what they did, the priests would bless them. Oh my child, they blessed them, blessing these men as they slaughtered men, women, and children. They did not give a damn about humanitarianism. They don't give a damn today about humanitarianism. They use humanitarianism as a means to conquer. They will conquer through peace. Now, some of you, you know what I'm talking about if you're astute in biblical history. This power shall come and conquer wonderfully through peace, through humanitarianism, through liberty, justice. What did George W. Bush and Dick Cheney say that they were bringing to Iraq in 2001? Oh, we're bringing liberty, we're bringing freedom, we're bringing justice. What did George H. Bush, the father of George W. Bush, say in 1991 when he sent troops from Iraq into Somalia? He said, we're coming under the banner of Operation Restore Hope, when in fact they were coming to support Total, the French oil company, coming to support American and globalist oil companies, Exxon Mobil, ConocoPhillips, coming into Somalia to support those people who the Somali leaders at that time, it was during Civil War at that time. You remember Black Hawk Down? At that time, these leaders said, no, we don't want to give our oil away to these oil companies. But yet you had some Somalis such as Abdullahi Yusuf and others who were signing and who were also responsible with some of the help of Western governments of overthrowing Siad Barre, who was president of Somalia at that time, putting Somalia into civil war. Now, Somalia features prominently with some things because right now, Somalia is on the map, especially right now, because now you have Ilhan Omar, a young Somali woman who is causing waves in American politics. Okay? And in some respects, not all respects, I disagree with her on some things. For example, on illegal aliens, totally disagree with her on that. Totally. Okay? But I agree with her on some things. But she is also showing showing some of our political leaders how you boldly and courageously get out there and push and promote those things that are in the interest of your people, while also promoting some of the things that are in the interest of American people in general. So we have to have a well-rounded knowledge of when we start talking about slavery, when we start talking about who was involved with it, when we start talking about reparations, we have to have a well-rounded knowledge about these things. We're not going to go out there and start chasing the Roman Catholic Church for reparations. That's not going to happen, my dear sister. But what you presented was very good. But I have an exception with that. We know about what the Roman Catholic Church has done, what they're doing right now, and the genesis, the Roman Church being the genesis of what was and what is right now and what will be tomorrow.
That was powerful, Brother T. West. Thank you so much, guys. Let's get these likes up. Hit that like button, everyone. Thank you for joining. The topic is: should immigrants get credit for building America? What we'll do, Brother West, we'll go ahead and close out. Anything else you'd like to share in closing?
Yeah, and I will say this to that question, because I did not answer it directly, but I will answer it directly in closing. And I will be short. I will be brief.
Well, take your time. Take your time.
Should immigrants get credit for the building of America? Well, look, immigrants played a role. They played a role. But they do not get credit for building anything until African Americans get their due. Until African Americans get what they put into this. They do not get credit. We are not going to carry their water. We are not going to cape for them. Whether they're coming from Hispanic countries, coming from Ireland, coming from Canada, coming from England, coming from France, Russia, wherever, we are not going to cape for them until we get what is ours. And I'm talking about in the form of reparations.
Absolutely. Brother T. West, how can people contact you if they want to reach out? And also shout out your page. Guys, make sure you go subscribe to Afri Synergy on YouTube. Make sure you guys go over there and subscribe.
Yes, Brother Dinus, your listeners and viewers, you can reach me at Afri Synergy News. I'm on Facebook. I'm also on YouTube, Afri Synergy News. You can reach me out there, and also videos that are posted on YouTube are also posted over to Twitter. So you can find me also out there on Twitter. Just Google, search in whichever search engine you're using, Afri Synergy News, and you'll find me and the content and the programs that I have presented in the past and the programs that we will be presenting in the future. So, Brother Dinus, once again, thank you so much for the invitation.
Anytime.
And may you have a great trip to Nigeria soon.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you go to search for Uhuru on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and Facebook. Like, share, and subscribe, family. Until next time, Dinus Samir, search for Uhuru. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.